Let me. There, like there was two Scots for a while.
Hey, Jamie.
Hello. We'll just wait a few minutes for John Chalk. Rich, you haven't heard that he's not attending.
Oh, John?
Yeah,
And, yeah,
No,
John's not.
John's away.
He's away.
Yeah, he's away.
Okay.
I believe they are waiting for Gary, though.
I know that John said he may or may not. He didn't know if he was going to tune in or not. So I would suggest we do not wait.
Thanks, Rich. And we need to hold out a little bit for Paul Jordan.
I just messaged Gary. He is planning on attending. I talked to him this morning. So
Okay.
I'm just checking to see if he has any difficulties.
Thank you, Scott. And we're waiting for Paul Jordan, our representative from the planning board.
Jamie, the Gary's was just on the phone. He is dialed in and can hear everybody, but he's not showing up or is able to have you hear him. Is there?
Scott,
Has there
is he 782-080 something or other?
It's either could is David Martin from Freeman White is having the same issue. They're having trouble with their mic or video working.
I have, as attendees, I have a 782-8020 caller. And then 3 other attendees, Bruce Rice, Carrie Brown, and Robert Kuchar. And
Yeah.
any of those?
I'm not sure about the number, the 781. Let me check with Gary.
Or have Gary press, I believe it's *6, star 9 to raise his hand.
Star
Jay.
9. Okay.
Jay, the Bruce Rice is from my office and Robert Kuchar is from the State Fire Marshal's office.
Oh, okay. Bring them in.
Thank you, Chris.
There we go. And if,
Okay. Are you in?
Hi, this is Gary.
yep, hi, Gary.
Good. Okay, well, I guess I can hear everybody, but I can't see myself, and you can't see me, but I can see all you.
I think David Martin is still having some mic and video issues.
I don't see David Martin as an attendee or as a panelist. There's currently 16 participants with this meeting.
Is Jennifer, are you on? I see your name.
I am here.
Okay. Yeah, David says he's raising his hand, but
No. Brian, your mic's not working, Brian. I can hear you through my wall, but that's about it.
Now?
Yes.
We can hear you,
Okay.
Brian.
I was just pointing out that on the attendees list, it says 4, but there's only 3 names in the list.
Right.
And one of them is the 8020 number, which you've already let in.
he's trying to do a star
Jen-
6 and star 9. So
Yeah.
I guess it says one call-in listener, and it's just Dave Martin's having trouble with the mute.
Jennifer's on. I think we can go ahead and get started.
Still waiting for one potential planning board member, so I'm gonna give them 2 more minutes till 1:10.
Scott, if you can email me David's contact information, I'll send him an invite to this directly.
We do have another planning board member sitting in the attendees list if you want to make an emergency appointment, Jamie.
We cannot do that, Brian.
Okay,
Susan or Maria?
Susan.
Jay, I just sent you David's email.
Very good. Why? It is weird though. I see 3 names in the attendees list, but then it says there are 4 attendees total. I don't understand that. All right, now it says 3. Back to 4.
Jay, it looks like both one of the panelists and one person in attendee has the same phone number. Is that gonna matter, do you think?
There are no call-ins that are in as panelists. There's just a 1 phone number under attendee.
I think that's Gary.
Yeah.
That's me.
You're muted, Jamie.
Thank you, Brian. Sorry about that, folks. I have 1:12 p.m. I would like to call the Technical Review Committee meeting to order Tuesday, May 18th, 2021, scheduled for 1 p.m. Our first agenda item is call to order. I'll take a roll. John Chalk. He is absent. Rich Bourbonnais.
Present.
Paul Jordan. Absent. Jamie Gorman.
Present.
Dave Flanders.
Present.
Jamie Rabbit. Present. And we also have Chris Henninger from Fire District joining us.
And Jay Parker.
And Jay Parker. And Brian Wagner also as staff. Agenda item B is approval of minutes. There are none since this is a special meeting. Item number C is TRC minor review. We have none. And then agenda item D is TRC advisory review. Agenda item D1, institutional master plan review, South County Hospital, proposed institutional master plan as required by section 603 2C of the zoning ordinance of the town of South Kingstown, South County Hospital, AP 64-1, lot 122, located at 70 Kenyon Avenue, South County Hospital, Inc., applicant/owner. We do have a number of representatives here from South County Hospital. The CEO is in the background, as well as representatives from VHB. So I would turn it over either to Scott or Gary to the introductions and explain what you have for us.
Okay. Scott, you want me to lead off?
Yeah, why don't you do that, Gary? And then we can move on. I'm thinking to have Jennifer and maybe David to talk a little bit about the front end, and we can talk about myself and Sky Levin is here for us as VHP as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate the invite to your meeting this afternoon. Hopefully, we've answered the questions from our initial meeting with Jay and Jamie and provided a document that that has some merit for this group, and looking forward to the discussion, conversation, and closing any gaps that we might have between what we submitted and what you all are looking for. So appreciate the time this afternoon. So this has been a pretty lengthy process for our organization to go through the master planning process parallel to a new strategic planning model that we put in place here probably about 18 months ago. So there's a lot of stuff going on with a strategic plan, new operations plan, trying to develop a facilities plan, because the strategies include a lot of facility renovation and work. So we want to make sure everything was aligned. So we engaged a team of people from Catalyst and Freeman White, Architectural Engineering Group, as well as Scott's team from PHB to help with the civil. We did I would call an internal master plan to lead things off, just so the front end projects were aligned with strategy. And then as we worked with Jamie's predecessor, we developed a plan to do a more holistic approach to submit what you're looking at here today, or will be looking at if you haven't looked at it already, the master plan, which is pretty in depth. So the strategy organization really drove this thing. The other thing that drove it was we've had several neighborhood meetings to get input from the neighbors on some of the things that were not right in their minds, and we listened to them, and we've incorporated a lot of those proposed changes into the overall master plan. The darn thing, I think, is nearly 400 pages long with all the addendums and everything. So it's quite lengthy, and we feel is pretty robust. So looking forward to the discussion this afternoon and answering any questions that y'all have. And again, my team members that are here supporting us: Scott Lindgren from VHB, Jennifer from Catalyst, who's actually got to leave the call early, and I hope that David Martin has been able to join the call. He was having technical difficulties getting in. So Jennifer, while you're here, maybe talk about a little bit more detail on the front end of the master plan that we put together, and then I'll have Scott review the rest of it.
Sure. So in the master planning effort, we started to look at the market dynamics and understanding the volume, market share, shifting of market share, and those components and the operations within the hospital to understand where service lines were growing, changing, and where that gap between what the existing facility afforded them was between what they were going to need in the future. And we looked at it across both a 5 and a 10-year horizon. And so where we identified those gaps and where they needed additional facilities to accommodate projected volumes, we developed various options in order to address those through projects, through architectural and MEP projects associated with addressing needs, like if there was additional volume to substantiate another OR, or we looked at inpatient volumes to see if there was an additional need for inpatient volumes, things like that. And you go down the whole list of imaging, emergency department. We even look at ancillary services to make sure that there's no bottlenecks in throughput due to support services that are supporting all of those clinical spaces. And so from the conclusions, we came to that there were, generally speaking, across most of the house, there was adequate key planning units. So for example, there were adequate quantity of beds to support the 5-year horizon. There was a need for an additional OR to support the 5-year projected volumes. And so we've listed out the projects that address some of those needs in the 5-year goal. It's in section 4.0. And it starts with addressing those volume-based needs, which are associated with the OR. In order to do the OR, we need to shift endoscopy. So we've completed those projects. They will be completed this year, this month, in order to gain that capacity within the hospital. Other projects associated with this master plan are related to ambulatory services and aligning ambulatory services with the acute setting. So co-locating specific procedural-based ambulatory services adjacent to the hospital to create synergies between the providers moving from clinic space into their procedural areas and back and forth. And what that does is that enables people to work at a much higher utilization so that we get better services associated with the providers that we have. So you can see there are projects associated with enabling cardiovascular services and orthopedic services and other specialty services to relocate into the existing MOB adjacent to the hospital. And that's going to help support a higher utilization.
And what it means. And I think, Gary, if you want to jump in and just to let the committee know of the importance of that project. And we do have a lot of work for the Town Farm Park that includes environmental and CRMC investigations, as well as archaeological investigations and National Park Service. And I don't believe that we can really, keep all that project in there without, facilitating a hardship on the main projects, which is the internal MOB Frost Connector and West Entry.
I think, Scott, before Gary jumps in, I think really where my mind is that to simplify a 393-page document to basically, a one-page table that's, really sums up what you said, is that here are the projects, and so you have your project list on the left, and MOB is we want to build it and its implications on parking are X. The OR is we want to build it in 0 to 5 years and the implications on parking are X. We have the next expansion, which requires us to do a expansion of our parking lot, but the critical path there is an amendment to the master plan that TRC is reviewing and the planning board will be contemplating.
Mm-hmm.
And, so that if someone said, what is the hospital doing? I turn to one page and it literally gives me that critical path where you're understanding that your critical path right now is renovations to the medical office building, which is referred to as the MOB. And then beyond that, there's some moving parts which will require the hospital that they're discussed and put on the table in this master plan, but it does require amendments, and the hospital recognizes that, and the planning board will recognize that. And
right.
You simplify that.
I mean, we can put that in a table. It is on page 56 for those projects in terms of the impact of parking. But if you feel a table would satisfy to get it in front of the board, then we could do that. To outline the parking impacts for the West Entry, which is the main piece of the parking impact during this period of temporary West Entry usage.
Right, and on page 50, that's where I started to do the math of this project has a net of -16. 2 other projects have a +12 and a +16, and trying to correlate that into the responses and looking at a demand of +80 or a reduction of 32 and 48 remain, and trying to make sense of all of that. And again, there are critical paths to that, and I agree with you. All of our discussions have been the critical path is the MOB building.
Right, and the parking impact, I thought was outlined, but we can outline it a little clearer in terms of the need during the temporary in terms of construction versus the finalized version, which would not have any impact to the campus parking. So if I have to be a little bit clearer with the table, then we can definitely do that, make it a little simpler.
So this is Gary. Let me jump in here because I just have some questions, and pardon my ignorance on this, but we have a lot of things that we have to get done here, and I'm just to amend a master plan that hasn't even been approved yet, and we're sitting here. What I'm hearing now, I thought we had one with the Town Farm Park, and now I'm hearing that we got two others with possible landscaping and lighting. So my question to you all is, what kind of information do you need in this master plan that meets the criteria for what you guys are addressing, so that we go into this thing with one amendment? Because I don't think including Town Farm Park in this thing is wise. I agree with that. But what information do you need from a landscaping and a lighting perspective that's not in there today that you need to, so we don't have to go back for amendments? Because that just doesn't feel right to me. To have a master plan submitted on when it hasn't even gone to the board yet, and sitting here with possibly 3 amendments. So I'd like to understand what the criteria is that we have to meet so that we don't have to amend anything for a landscaping plan or a lighting plan or any other things other than Town Farm Park.
I think, Gary, to address that, some of it is solidifying your plan on lighting, that the following isn't planned to be done. It's intended and will occur. You know, again, master plan lays out a direction. The difficulty is the planning board doesn't see this again. So once it's approved, you get to go and build your projects. And if there's no clarity in when the lighting gets fixed or when the landscaping goes in, not saying you would do it, you would have the ability to say, well, I redid my OR, I redid my MOB, I redid my parking lot, and I ran out of money and I'm not doing, I planned for it, but I didn't do my lighting. And I ran out of money, so I didn't incorporate my master landscape plan. We intended to, but we didn't. So it's just trying to look at clarity so you're not, so there's some sort of deliverable that the hospital has in their master plan. And again, I think you can potentially do it with wording. It's just right now, as I read the document, I didn't see the tie-in. So I brought it up as a subject matter today, which I'm very glad you heard and are concerned with the number of amendments. That was my concern, that I want you to be in a position where you don't have to potentially.
So yeah, so Jamie, and just stay on landscaping. We outlined 3 projects that are going to include landscape improvements as part of the master plan.
Mm-hmm.
There would be the main entry for the MOB connector and the west entry improvements, which was kind of rendered in there, what's going to happen for those type of landscapes. Obviously, Town Farm Park is a larger landscaping effort because it's expanding the parking, and we have some improvements to do for screening, though that's included in there. I guess what Gary's question is, what else is necessary at this point if we're identifying the 3 projects that have landscape improvements to them? That eventually, and we identified that the Town Farm Park would obviously have a landscaping plan that would be in front of this committee and the board, because of the critical, viewshed nature and neighborhood. So the question is, I guess for understanding for Gary's point of view is, what else is really required if this is the landscaping plan for the master plan?
To me, a tie-in to your program build out. So again, so that the plan, I'm trying to anticipate questions from the planning board and the nature of land use boards concern that people undertake the projects that they have in the queue to continue operations and the others get pushed off. So understanding that lighting's in your master plan, I wouldn't want to have to answer to a planning board 10 years from now is when was that lighting going to get done? They built all their other projects and didn't address the lighting. So I think the master plan I think you can address it, Gary and Scott, and to tie-ins to other projects, that when town farm parking gets done, that X, Y, and Z are also programmed with that. It's not that town farm gets done and the other things don't. You know, so your critical path is, I'm doing what I need for operations, but I've ignored some other important components because they're not as important to the hospital, although you pointed out the deficiencies.
Yeah, I guess my goal in terms of the
Kind of critical
plans,
path, Gary.
yeah, the plans submitted
Yep.
would comply with zoning and the landscaping and lighting requirements.
Right, but should the town give you a
But
zone
it's,
to expand the hospital when you're non-compliant with your lighting?
so, guys, let me, because I want to make sure that we have direction here so we can get revisions done and expedite this process. So on page 29, we have a high-level schedule, and you know, probably to my fault, you know, we haven't included the level of detail. You know, for us, it's we know that when we do, you know, those projects in the MOB, which would be wound care and cardiac rehab and the West Entry and vascular experts, all those names that are on there mean something to me, and it relates to a landscape package around that medical office building. Okay, we probably need to break that out on a path to show, you know, when that landscape plan is done, because it is part of the budget of each of these projects to get that completed. We have purposely left out Town Farm Park for reasons that we've already discussed. If we have to create another milestone schedule around lighting, it's simple. It's simple to do. It's probably enough lighting around here to do it over the next 3 years, and be done with it, and show that schedule, and the fact that it's part of our strategic capital budgeting plan. So I think those are, if I understand things correctly, it's a level of detail that I didn't think was required at the master plan. So you can all blame it on me. I didn't think it was required at the master plan level to provide that level of detail. I thought that would come in the next round of approvals when that kind of detail was there. But if it's required at this level, then let's put it in, because the information's there. There's been a lot of work done here to get to the level of detail, and the fact that we're not putting it into the master plan, you know, is a fault, is what I'm hearing. And so let's put it in and make sure that people have the information so that they know that we're going to spend the money on these projects for landscaping. We're going to spend the money on these projects for lighting. We're going to do all the things that we already know we're going to do that we haven't articulated well in this document. So if that's the level of detail that's required, we certainly will do that.
And again, Gary, I think you're touching upon what my observations are, that the data exists, the document exists, the words are in the document. It's just that final tie-in. Because again,
Got it.
after they approve this,
Yep.
they do not
Thanks.
see it again. So, but I think you're almost there. So I'll just go quickly one, if Jamie, based on discussion, any additional comments?
No, just like you were saying, like the answers are here. It's just able to digest it in a form that would be able to present some deadlines and know when things will be completed. But I do agree, it's here. It just needs to be formatted a little differently.
Rich?
No, I have nothing else at this time.
David?
Just that I think you're correct that the planning board, that's going to be one of their first questions is, well, what about the landscape and why isn't this articulated? And I think that's where it's going to end up.
Chris, I'm assuming the conversation didn't affect fire safety?
Nope, not at all.
Thank you. Thank you. Jay or Brian, as staff to the planning board, anything to add?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just, to Gary's question or statement that he made previously, I think all of the detail and all the information that's required to be included as part of a master plan submission such as this is outlined in section 603.2 of our zoning ordinance in regards to institutional master plans. Specifically, item C in that section calls out master plan requirements, and that all healthcare institutions shall file a master plan with the planning board, which shall be in compliance with the use and dimensional requirements of this ordinance and the town's comprehensive plan. Just taking that sentence on its face, the report, the master plan does reference parking spaces required by the zoning ordinance as it exists today. But then later on in the document, it does not refer back to those. I think we've touched on this already, but it also doesn't contemplate the number of spaces required by the ordinance with the completion of the proposed improvements either. And I think there's some effort that needs to be made to get in line with the requirements of the ordinance, which is all referenced in section 603.2, including parking, landscaping requirements, loading spaces, lighting, to that extent. And it does need to be presented in a manner. I think, what we've said all along was that the information, there's a lot of information here, and the pertinent information that comes out of it needs to be portrayed in a manner that's easy for the planning board to understand, to help facilitate the tracking of this in a timely manner. But I think that is going to be inherently important going forward. I know you guys did a ton of work in the parking analysis and the traffic, and recognizing the needs of the hospital, the perceived needs of the hospital based on the hospital's potential demand. But there's the other aspect of the town requirements and the town code that need to be addressed somehow, one way or another.
Jay and Jamie, just a quick question in terms of just where we're going, just knowing in terms of compliance. Where are we going to sit when we cannot be in compliance? Dimensional compliance for this is specifically because we've got an existing site that is constrained, and we're trying to represent here is the real need of the hospital versus the zoning hospital, specifically on parking. We have landscaping, obviously, is a dimensional requirement. So I just to put it on the table here is, where do you feel the board is going to stand when there is a non-compliance issue based on the institutional master plan historically?
Yeah, and I think that's the question, but I think there's got to be some recognition of existing non-conforming at some point in time, and then the expansion of that, Scott, and the hospital is doing everything in their power to comply with a modern code on a historic building that didn't have those type of provisions and parameters. So, it's a hard question to answer for the planning board, but I understand what you're asking us to try and answer is that the zoning code, in essence, as Jay pointed out, contemplates as if this was being built as a brand new building from scratch on a site that has yet to be developed, right? And if you were building this today, here's what your requirements are from parking. And I think you're doing a good job about showing the need versus the quantified aspect of the zoning regulations, but that's something ultimately the planning board has to deal with. You are presenting the best information you have, short of building a 3-story parking garage to comply with zoning, and then explaining to the planning board that even if you built it, you would have 300 empty spaces, right? Because your needs don't align with the zoning code. So the discussion you're on is a good discussion. I would continue along that path because, as you've mentioned, you don't have a way to comply other than structured parking. Right? But again, we can only point out and assist you on a path. We cannot speak for the planning board in their interpretation of that section. But again, I think the discussion and path you're on is a good discussion and path. You know, your only way out of that regulatory aspect is either to acquire more land or go vertical. And in discussions, vertical based on scope is not an option at this time. So that's a long way of saying I don't have an answer for you today. Because I don't sit on the planning board as a voting member. But if you quantify anything you're expanding or anything you're doing, any expansion plans contemplates compliance with zoning requirements from this date forward. And you can make that type of statement, correct, Scott?
That's correct. Town Farm Park will comply with the zoning sections, and as does anything else. Just as a campus in totality, we're not going to hit the over 1,000 parkings. What's identified in zoning, just based on trying to be compliant, throughout the campus. But each project will be envisioned to be looking at compliance as being the goal.
May I ask one more question along the lines of expansion? But do you anticipate increases in sewer, water, other services? Particularly sewer, because that would be town in this case.
I don't believe that the any of the renovations changes anything in terms of sewer flows, water capacities. We're not looking for any new hookups or new increased line services. There's nothing other than some stormwater, Rich, obviously, that we're going to have to work through.
Yeah, well, the stormwater, yeah, and that'll be really CRMC is going to care more.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's possible at this point, but to make note of potential, maybe increases in sewer use would be nice to know at this point.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to put on, John's not here, John Schock. He would be more, more concerned with that. But it'd be nice to see some sort of discussion about that. I can't see that's going to be anymore. Water is Suez.
So what are the next steps? Oh, so I'm sorry, Jamie's on the phone, okay.
I think Jamie's on the phone. He might be fielding a question, perhaps.
All right, we'll wait him a second then.
sorry about that. So next steps are amongst the members, we have to make a determination of whether there's a comfort level of moving this forward to the planning board, with an understanding that there are a number of items that will be addressed by the applicant as it relates to solidifying their parking tallies and kind of formulating a table associated with expansion and parking, and which expansion triggers what parking, and in a usable, easy format. Solidification of what landscaping projects are going to be instituted associated with what project and timeframes. When lighting's going to be brought on board and tied into what projects and association there. Understanding that this will go through the full planning board as a master plan review and major development project under that master plan. So, but prior to that, we do have two planning board members who are in the audience, and we do have one who has their hand raised, who just, I know it's been past practice with TRC to allow planning board members to make brief comments in a non-prejudicial manner, because they are and will be sitting on an application before them associated with master plan review. So we do have Maria Mack and Susan Axelrod in attendance. So Jay, do you have the ability to unmute Maria?
Hi, this is Maria. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Maria.
Yep.
I apologize for not having read the document. I only heard about this meeting today, and I know that our duty member was unable to be here because of work obligations, and that sometimes happens. Just wanted to state that I appreciate the work that's gone into every application that comes before us, and certainly it's very helpful to hear from Jamie and from Jay's perspective of things. As a veteran of the board, I have been through a couple of master plans for South County Hospital and updates to that effect. So again, just wanted to apologize for not having had the opportunity to read any of the information, as I only found out about this meeting today, but thank you everyone for being here.
Okay, thank you, Maria. We do have Rich, David, Jamie Gorman. Is there any comfort from the TRC? I think a lot of our comments tonight are really format and the delivery of the information as it relates to the report, and less technical in nature. It's really how the message is delivered and stated. So is there any comfort level on the TRC members of moving this along to the planning board? Or is there a mindset that you would like to see some revisions and have it back before you? I'll ask Rich.
I don't know that I take any issue with going to the planning board at this point. You know, I think there's a lot of information in this document. You know, yeah, I do a little bit because I think there's just so much here that I haven't really absorbed it all, but I can go either way on it, Jamie, frankly.
Jamie Gorman?
I'm comfortable with moving it along to the planning board, provided, you know, the items addressed that you touched on, Jamie, were cleared up, defined, parking, timelines, things of that nature for the phasing.
David?
Yeah, if those revisions are made, I don't think we need to see it again. I just want the planning board to have as much information as they can if this is the only time they're going to see it.
And again, my goal and objective as the chair of the TRC is, if that's the sentiment of the committee, is to make sure the applicant understands the type of information and almost consolidation of information in a digestible format. So that'll make it a much easier and efficient discussion for you, Scott and Gary, when you're before the planning board. I think from a technical standpoint, a lot of the information's there, a lot of the data's there. Gary stated that it may not be in a document, but we have it, and we can, add a page here and add a page there. That may make the discussion and conversation much more fluent and fluid in front of the planning board. So as the chair, I'm also
Jamie, this is Gary.
moving it along.
Jamie, this is Gary. I just got a quick question for you. I heard some points come out today that I think are really, really important. And so if we revise the documentation to support some of the things that we talked about here today, so number one, building a table of the projects and the implication on parking, putting in the lighting schedule of when we believe the lighting will get taken care of, and including a landscaping schedule around the major projects that we've already listed. If we revise it slightly to include those things that we've talked almost all afternoon on, does that document then have to come back to this group before it can get forwarded to the planning group? Or with those slight revisions, knowing that we're not changing the content, we're just showing it a different way, do you guys have to, I still want to lose another 30 days, I guess is what I'm asking. Or can you move this forward? We still make those slight revisions?
Yeah, Gary, that's the discussion. It's really, if you listen to the comments today, a lot of them were format information driven, not necessarily technically driven. It's an understanding of how your master plan correlates to all the projects. So to your point, I think if you can solidify some of the data in a more digestible form and perhaps supplement it in a couple areas with information you said you have on hand, the members of this committee appear to be comfortable moving it forward to the planning board. And by doing that, it does not come back to the TRC.
Okay. And so if that's the steps moving forward, then we could revisions get it back to you, and then when would we have to be prepared for the planning committee meeting?
Okay, I'll defer to you on the dates.
The next meeting could be June 22nd if we get the public notice in the paper and done in time. And the potential revisions that we discussed are, completed in time. But the deadline to have it in to make the 22nd would be somewhere around the 1st of June. If not next week. I'll have to look in that. I have to look at what the advertising requirements are on how they fall next month as to how early we need to get it into the newspaper to make the deadlines.
Okay. I just, maybe not the right question to ask right now, but certainly on my mind since I just saw this, but what impact does all your timing of all these meetings have with the recent departure and resignation of your town manager?
From a planning board perspective, planning board's intact, planning department's intact. public service, engineering, all the departments are intact. There's just a changeover in town manager position effective June, and interim has already been named. So life within the town hall continues. So I don't see any impact on the permitting process associated with the planning board.
Okay, thank you.
David?
Yeah, I had one question. If the planning board feels that they need more information or in a slightly different form, can they table it for a next meeting? I mean, you said they only get to see it once, but
No,
does that have?
David, just for clarity, they run it through the regulatory timeframes that Rhode Island state law lays out and our ordinances lay out. What my statement was is that if the planning board were to approve the master plan, that gives South County Hospital the ability to move forward with their projects.
Got it.
Because they are now included in the master plan.
Okay.
Okay. So it's, the planning board can take their regulatory timeframe to review. Once they take final action on it, the hospital can move forward on their projects.
Okay.
With that discussion being held, is there anyone who are willing to make a motion either to table this discussion to the next regularly scheduled meeting or to make a favorable referral to the planning board with recommended reformatting and additional information to be submitted with the application to the planning board for master plan approval?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
And David, sorry, this is Jay Parker. David, for clarification, that motion was in regards to which option?
To move it to the planning board with the changes that we discussed.
Thank you.
And the schedules, et cetera.
And we have a second by Rich Bourbonnais. I will ask for roll call. David Flanders.
Aye.
Jamie Gorman.
Aye.
Rich Bourbonnais.
Aye.
Jamie Rabbit. Aye. So it moves on to the planning board.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you,
Thank you,
everybody,
everyone.
for your time and your good comments. We'll get right on those revisions.
Thank you all.
Yep. Very good meeting.
Thanks,
Yep,
Jimmy.
thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have to adjourn the meeting or anything?
I guess the meeting is adjourned.
It isn't actually adjourned until Jamie says so,
I think we lost him, so.
All right,
Motion to adjourn?
So moved. See you guys later.
See you
See
later.
ya.